back on brake lines. So I've started on the passenger side now, from the wheel cylinder down to the T-piece where the flexi joins, and yeah, same as the front. Wire, template, really can't make it any simpler than that. So I've already bent it up. That's pretty much the rough shape it's going to be. That's me cut off there. Everything's all pretty good there. So the original ones, they're actually fed in between the U-bolts and the diff, which isn't a really great idea. They don't need to be. So this just goes backwards and around. Feeding them through, they get snagged up and shit. At least if you can keep it away from everything, there's no chance of any damage or anything possibly happening to those brake lines. I'm going to cut this piece out, build it, get it all done, and then I'll get the other piece and we'll figure out if we've got enough length. The first side's all done up, so I've just put some electrical tape on just to stop the fittings from flying off. And yeah, fit him up here. It's looking pretty good. Pretty happy with that. So what I'll do is I'll probably measure all this and then replicate it and then build on from there, just because yeah, the other side is going to be exactly the same. And then yeah, this hole is actually where the T joint block, whatever you want to call it, bolts to, and then the flexi goes up. So yeah, just run into there. Might need a little bit of trimming, but I won't worry about it just yet until I get that piece. So I'll have to buy that. We'll get on the other side now. Building to go along there, and then yeah, as I said, come up over the top of the housing and then down again and meet in pretty much the same point there. That was quite a bit of stuffing around, mainly because I had to bend it by hand to get the sort of right radiuses and stuff around the center of the housing. And I'm picky, but I'm pretty happy with how it's now turned out. So yeah, it's come up pretty good. Tried to get that as close as I could, and yeah, biggest thing's trying to keep it uniform. I like symmetrical things. Obviously, that's not symmetrical and whatnot, but the ends are exactly the same, so they should bolt up exactly the same. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. Finally have all the brake lines bent up and run in their place. So started all the way back there at the bracket for the flexi line. So all the way back there, it runs down, it actually steps up in behind the cross member there because they're actually riveted. So I don't want the brake line rubbing on the rivets or anything, so I've actually stepped it up and then stepped back down. Coming along, there is a join just there. The reason I've done a join is segmented is a lot easier, because if there was any damage to say this section or the middle section or the front section, instead of pulling the whole lot out, you can undo that section and replace it, so you're not pulling the whole system out, and makes it a lot easier to use. And that's how they did it from factory. So yeah, so I've done one there. It's really easy to get to. Moving down, goes in behind this cross member, steps up again, comes down. There's a join there, so it's just around the bend and on the flat, makes it a lot easier to join. And then yeah, it goes along, steps up, probably a bit too high, but it's easier safe than sorry. Which leads me to my next exciting job, which is clean all this crustiness underneath the back of the truck up and tidy it all up, and then paint it like I have under the cab. So I have to go through. There's a few bits that need cutting off, shitty exhaust hangers and stuff that don't work anymore, don't need to be there. So I'll do that, get rid of all the old grease and oil and shit from the hydraulics and all that sort of stuff. A bit more going on today. Finally back at work after breaking this thing. On the fence about it, but that's just work. So anyway, yeah, it's good to be getting back to normal. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks I'll be able to get back on the bike, hopefully not write myself off again. Also, brake booster and the proportioning valve for the tow truck is now sent off, finally. And yeah, the brake mob will pull all that apart, rebuild it, hopefully send it back and it'll all be Mickey Mouse. So I've also sent over the master cylinder. I did give them all the information, but just to be safe, sent the old one over so they can look at it. and get a rough idea of what they need to purchase. So hopefully that'll be back soon. Then it's all a matter of, make sure it's all clean and tidy and nicely painted. Bolt it back on, put the lines on, bleed some brakes up. West Coast F100 sent us down some parts, and pretty quick. Like, it was only a day or two ago that I actually bought this stuff, so pretty happy with it. So we finally got a clutch pedal rubber. Also got these little clips. These hold the flexi lines in the brackets, which will hold these in. So these are the front hoses for the caliper. So left and right is exactly the same on these trucks, well, this truck anyway. There are two different types. This is the later model type, and it's matching what we've got. So got that, and we've also got the rear hose, which goes from the chassis to the diff, which has got the little block in there which screws into the actual diff tube. So that should be, that should have the flexi lines out of the way, and these are nice and flexible, unlike the old ones which are all perished and shit. So those bits should get us pretty much done with the brakes. Got ourselves a washer bottle pump, just your generic one. You can get these from Auto Pro, Repco, all that sort of stuff. So pretty easy. If it ever shits itself, you can always just go and get another one. And that's to fit the brand new Auto Technica washer bottle. Fittings turned up. So yeah, there's 10 of those, so there's plenty, a couple of spare, which is good. So that should get that done. Also, we've got some wiring wrap, a shit ton. So yeah, the biggest stuff and the smallest stuff that I use. So yeah, that should get the wiring done, out of the way, protected. Anyway, I did say that a while ago that I needed my nutcert tool, and I knew I had one and couldn't find it, which led me to borrowing this fella. Well, it was down the other shed bit before, and works out that someone had my other one in their stash. I suppose two's better than one. If I end up going to throw the rods out of this thing, I can just grab that one and send it. But anyway, which also means I've got an absolute shit ton of nutcerts now. So I reckon this box will outlast me. I think I'll be dead before this thing's empty. But anyway, better too much than not enough. Posty, I reckon he's earned his keep this week because he's been fucking flat out. I've now started on the back half of the truck, getting it all cleaned up, everything we don't need gone, out of the way, so that I can actually get to the chassis and paint it all properly. So the old hydraulic tank, all its lines and everything, got rid of that. I should have done this a long time ago. All the brackets that hold it, the shitty old toolbox, even the mud flaps, so they're off because they had more folds in it than a paper plane. But it's tidied it right up. Makes the truck look a hell of a lot longer now. But yeah, we've got plenty of room to work with. So we now have the diff lines done. The new flaring tool is working awesome. Flares look a shit ton better. And yeah, that's what we've ended up with. So yeah, they've come up pretty good. And then yeah, now they run to the right spot with that T-block there. And yeah, everything's out of the way, it's protected, it's on the back side of the axle, it's not hanging up above it or anything, with the potential of getting hit or knocked by anything. So it's come up pretty good. So now I've just got to do some brackets, figure them out, just because this line isn't going to hug the tube like it was, and those brackets are pretty cactus anyway. But yeah, that's pretty much it for brake lines, so that's good. Now the flaring tool that I've got now works a treat. We are golden. So I've laid these dodgy ass things up. So just basically some steel bar, drilled a hole through it, tapped the hole, milled them down a bit, and yeah, so nothing special. They look rough as fuck, but they should do the trick. And being the thick wall that they are now, I should be able to run the heat up a bit for it to bite in the chassis, but also bite into these and not burn away into the thread here. So so build a few of those. Basically that's the idea there. So it's actually going to keep the lines up off the bottom of the rail too, which some people might agree with, some don't. These do look pretty sketchy because they are actually dual 3/16 separators, and I've ended up drilling this end out to 1/2 inch and then folding them open a bit so that they now accept the 1/2 inch line. I probably could have went 1/2 inch ones and then just built like a spacer or a adapter to go into the small side. But anyway, I bought these ones and realised that they're not exactly, I thought they were going to be sort of the same size, width and everything as the bigger ones. But yeah, they actually, overall, they're smaller. So I've managed to just get away with it. Yes, they look terrible, but once they're clamped on the hose, you can't really tell that I've made a shit show out of them. So anyway, that's going to do the job for now. And then when the line goes to a single line, once the fuel line sort of takes off down to the pump, basically just using these ones. Bought them in a pack of 10. Yes, it's overkill for a tow truck, but I want decent lines on this and decent mounts and everything. So brake lines, fuel lines, there won't be anything going wrong in the future for them. Speaking of brakes, we now have a brand new rebuilt booster and brand new master cylinder. So cheers to Mount Gambier Brakes for sending this one off to get rebuilt, and also getting that one brought in and ordered. So yeah, done a pretty good job of rebuilding it. It's even got new vacuum fitting, rubber boot, like everything's brand new. So yeah, it's worked out pretty good, and they did a pretty good job of it. So that is brake booster mounted and on. Looks pretty good in there. Was a bit of a mission, mainly because these brackets here. So originally I had them bolted on tight, and I decided to fit this before I sent it off, and it didn't fit anymore. So what I had to do was actually loosen this, stretch all these out, and then fit them up after I've put the booster on. So it meant that everything had to be on loosely, then I'll do this up, and then I'll do the firewall up, and then it's all good. Bit of stuffing around, because you can't really fit a ratchet in there or anything quick. So yeah, the old spanner's back to the job. So anyway, it's in there, it's looking pretty good, and yeah, obviously it's cleaner than everything else because it's not covered in 10 foot of dust. So that's what we've ended up with. So yeah, it's all together now. It's now got the small tube nut on it. The longer one was not a good idea, but anyway, we figured that one out. I probably should have bled this while it was off the truck, but I suppose I can do it where it is. I'll just have to go at it a little bit differently. But for the brake booster side of things, yeah, it's pretty much just the hose there, run it to the carby, and that's pretty much done for the brake booster. Tonight, I've got into mounting all the hard lines underneath the truck now, all the way from the front. Everything's mounted now, so yeah, I welded me little stubs on, whatever you want to call them. And yeah, it's elevated the lines up off the bottom of the chassis rail, and yeah, it looks pretty good. So everything's fitting up pretty nicely. And then yeah, running along here runs into the fuel pump setup. So I ended up finally setting that up and drilling the holes for the bolts to go on the chassis. Also had to cut the top out of it because some dickhead decided to weld one of those little stubs right where this had to go. So anyway, it worked out alright because the line ducts in underneath as well. So the thickness of that would have closed the gap up too much. And yeah, moving on, the lines run along all the way down the back, all the way up to where the flexi line goes into. So I ended up lathing up 3 more of those little threaded bungs, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, they're welded on now, so that supports all the midsection of the brake line there going on this side. Ended up drilling these ones out to accept the diff cover bolts, and then this top one I actually drilled into the diff itself, tapped it, and now it accepts one of these bolts to match them ones there. So this side, it's got the 3-way block, so it's pretty well supported there, and then I'll put one more over there so it sort of matches the other side, and shit ain't really going anywhere. Now what's going to happen is all this is going to be taken off, all that shit's going to be taken off, and yeah, I have to get into cleaning the diff up inside the chassis rail and get all that ready for paint. That's pretty much it for under here, which is good because I'm kind of fucking sick of it. And yeah, I've just got one bracket for the bottom of the fuel pump, and I'll make that now, I think. And then yeah, take it all back out, we should be done. So this little bracket, pretty simple, just T-bracket with a couple of 90-degree folds in it. So pretty much what this does is it helps carry this piece here. Also keeps it nice and rigid to the chassis rail, because as you can see, just there, it pretty much just hangs off that top edge. And what I'm worried about is where it hangs over the edge like that, it's going to start doing that going down the road, and then pretty much fail at the bend there. So what this does is it eliminates that, supports it as well, makes it stronger, and yeah, just because it's out in the elements on a pretty dirty old tow truck, and you look at that suspension there, it's definitely not the kindest of things. So yeah, pretty much picks up off these 2 bolt holes. I've got to get longer bolts, but yeah, they are the bolt holes for the pump, to bolt the pump to this actual housing thing. So pretty much, yeah, 2 for 1 deal now. And then I also drilled a hole through the side of this plate, because it's not like there's not 20,000 other ones. For anybody who's worrying about this thing hanging a little bit low underneath the chassis and possibly going to get hit or damaged or whatever, that cross member there is lower. If anything's going to hit it, it's going to have to hit the fuel tank first, or that cross member. So I think it's pretty safe where it is. If it was going to be hanging out in the open on its own, I probably would have changed design, but I think it's going to be fine. Anyway, that's it for tonight.